Welcome to our first podcast, the introduction of our first podcast.
Yes, welcome. It's not an introductory podcast. It's a podcast that has an introductory episode.
Correct.
Yes. But it is our inaugural podcast. That would be accurate
word.
And correct. Yes.
Especially given that it's an election year. That's a good word to use.
Yes. I think we want to avoid that topic, though.
We do, for sure. At all costs.
Yes. I think we should probably talk about how we got here.
That's probably a good place to start.
And at the beginning, I know, right?
Right.
I know we were telling this story last night we were out with a couple of friends last night for dinner, and we were telling them about our podcast, and then we were getting ready to record our intro episode, which is right now. We were telling them kind of how we got here and what inspired the podcast. And I said that I had asked you to read the book, All the Ugly and Wonderful Things, but I was reading the little script we kind of outlined, and it was Gone Girl. Gone Girl was the first one. Yes, which are two amazing books, but I'm pretty sure it was Gone Girl. Who knows? It might have been another one. Yeah, so I asked you to read those books, and then that's kind of been a theme when a book particularly resonates with me, or maybe something in the book resonates with me in regards to our relationship, I've recommended it to you. So you've read quite a few books over the years, and we've been married close to 12 years now.
Yeah.
That I've recommended.
Yeah, which has been helpful. Like, I'm a pretty streaky reader. So I go in waves where I'll read a lot and then I won't read anything for a while. But I think that's been reduced a bit, especially recently over the last couple of years as we've done this a little bit more. One of the things for me that's made me a streaky reader is just like, I don't really know what to read. I tend to gravitate to one particular thing for a little while and then just kind of fall off the cliff. So with you being a more avid reader and knowing me as well as you do, it's been helpful for me to like expand my reading palette even to different genres and different types of books that I would have no idea or wouldn't have picked up on my own.
And I think that is what also really resonated with us to do the podcast. So I was visiting a local bookshop, and I was admittedly eavesdropping on the conversation of a couple of the shop. I think one of them was the owner. I really don't remember. I think owner, worker, employee. They were talking about their book club. And so I was laughing at some of their conversation because they were complaining about some of the people in their book club and some of their, I don't know what I want to say. Commentary, thank you. Was maybe some of the things that I might get a little, I could relate to it. I could relate to some of those things, which maybe we'll get into a little later, particularly with how people rate books. But anyway, so I joined their conversation because I felt compelled to after eavesdropping, which I admitted to. And then I ended up talking to these ladies for an hour and a half. I talked about this idea for this podcast, and they absolutely loved it. And they said, you have to do this podcast. More women want, their partners to read books or read books that they're reading particularly. And so I think that just speaks to what you're saying. Like maybe you want to read, but you don't know what to read.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And it's just a good sharing moment for us too. Like reading is so important to you, and like having this for the two of us to talk about this and books that you're interested in. And we're just choosing to record and publish for the world to enjoy our banter.
And there'll be no shortage of that.
Truth.
So shout out to the ladies at Turn the Page Bookstore in Westfield, Indiana, for encouraging us to really pull the plug on this podcast. I told them I would do that if it ever came to fruition. So hopefully this actually makes it into the ether somewhere.
We'll put their shop website in the show notes.
Oh, good. One of the things we wanted to talk about was how I rate books. And you can find me on Goodreads. You can Google my name and Goodreads. I'm sure it'll pop up, but we'll also link this in the show notes. But I think it's important to talk about when I say something's 4 or 5 stars, 3 stars, what do I mean? What does that mean to me? Because everyone has their own rating system.
Right.
And I think first things first is I have to get this off my chest. It's been weighing on there for many millennia now. There are not a finite number of 5 stars you can give books in a year.
There's not?
There's not. There's absolutely not. You can give every single book, if you felt so inclined to, 5 stars. Now, remember, most of the books I'm reading are 4 and higher. Those are books that I'm coming across through different means. Someone recommends them. On Goodreads, if you like a book, it's, recommends other books that are within the same, genre or subject matter. And if something's 3.7, 3.8, I get a little nervous. That means that like the majority of people thought it was a 3 or a 4, which for me isn't great. If someone recommends a book to me that's 3.8, 3.7, I don't know, 3.9, maybe that's less risky, I'll read it for sure. But I won't read a book that's rated 3.7 on Goodreads without a recommendation, either by a friend or by a bookstagrammer, someone I've been following and trust. I like other books that they've, read and rated. But back to what makes a 5-star book. So I think if I read a book, it kept me intrigued. I was excited to pick it up each time. I enjoyed the characters. I felt maybe the characters were relatable in some way. I didn't see any major plot holes. I laughed, I cried. I didn't really want the book to end. I'm going to give it 5 stars. Yeah. Like, it doesn't have to be the best book I've ever read. It doesn't have to be the best book I've read that year or maybe that month. You can't compare a 300-page rom-com to a 700-page epic fantasy. Right. You just can't. They're totally different books. Yeah. But it doesn't mean that 300-page rom-com, which I would say is a little lighter in general in subject matter, is not 5 stars. Like, is it 5 stars at being the book that it is? If you go into McDonald's, you're not going to compare it to a Capital Grille, which is our steakhouse of choice. Right. But that doesn't mean that McDonald's is not a 5-star McDonald's or a 5-star fast food. Like, did you go in? Did they get your order right? Was the service friendly? Was the bathroom clean? Was the area clean? Like, did you have everything you needed?
Makes sense.
So you have to rate books where they are and what kind of book they are. Now 4 stars. All right, so if there's a hole in the plot or something else that just didn't make sense, maybe I felt the author, I don't know, felt short someplace, I might give it 4 stars. And another reason I might give it 4 stars if there's an unreliable narrator.
Wait, time out. I don't know what that means.
So an unreliable narrator to me is in the book, you have your person who's telling the story. Maybe it's from multiple point of views. But if there is a narrator that suddenly changes their character, their storyline, their personality, I don't like that. Because it makes me wonder, okay, if we get halfway through a book, it's 200 pages through, was anything in those first 200 pages the truth?
Oh, I see. So meaning like you're following along with this character, they've made certain decisions along the way through the book that's giving them an arc, and all of a sudden they make a completely 180 decision from the pattern or path that they've already made up to that point? Is that kind of
that could be it, or they just tell you stuff and they contradict themselves later on in the story.
I see.
Now, there will be some authors that I have read that I think their intention is to use this as like a plot twist, but to me, it just doesn't create this throughput of the story.
I see.
And I don't like that. Maybe that's a personal thing, but that's usually more what I reserve for 3 stars. I feel like an unreliable narrator, because that is just something that's just going to really turn me off from the book. So, but back to 4 stars is like, it's good. It's really good probably, but there was just like a tiny piece kind of missing for me.
So the unreliable narrator isn't necessarily a 4-star. You would categorize that more as a 3-star.
Yeah, it kind of depends on what we're talking about.
Okay, I got you.
But 3 stars would be, I want to like this book, but it's tough to read at times. I didn't feel excited about picking it up. Definitely the unreliable narrators here. characters that are unlikable, and I don't say unlikable because, hey, there's always characters you just don't resonate with, aren't unlikable, but they're just not relatable. Like, no one's going to do that. No one would say that. No one would act this way. Or the story's just not believable. And I don't mean sci-fi, like
not realistic, believable.
Yes. Yes. Like
in the
this
context of the story.
Yeah. Or maybe there's just like too many coincidences. Like all these things would have had to happen for this one thing to be possible. So,
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be 3 stars.
Okay.
2 stars, I'm almost certain, and someone's going to probably fact check me on this, is I've only given one book on Goodreads 2 stars. And I did that because it had, I think at least one, maybe 2, because it was written from multiple points of view, unreliable narrators. It had major plot holes, and the characters were not likable. It was just too coincidental. Like all these like things, and I don't know. I just really did not care for it.
So really, it's a culmination of a lot of things that you've already kind of called out. Like if a book has 1 or 2 of these things, it's probably 4-star. If it has 3 or 4 of these things, it's a 3-star. If it has a bunch of these things, then it's like cumulatively.
Yeah, I mean that might be a little generous, but yes, yeah. And then a 1-star book, I feel like probably shouldn't have been written.
Ouch.
How many books have you seen on Goodreads that are 1 point something? I mean, 2 point something is even tough.
Yeah, that's fair.
So that's what I mean. I've only given one book 2 stars because most of the ones I'm reading, like.
I get that. That's helpful. I mean, it's helpful for people to understand as we move on through this podcast to understand like what we mean by the ratings. I think I pretty much align with all of that. I'm probably not as granular in your thinking in each of those reasons because I just don't read as much as you. So maybe I don't pick up on intricacies of a storyline or a plot or something to that effect that you might pick up on just based on how much you read. But yeah, I mean, to me, a 5-star is, I can't put it down. There are characters that I can relate to or, you care about as characters in the world that they're in, and you just want to keep turning the page. And 4 stars is probably similar, but maybe there's a couple of characters or something that I just can't connect with and at a certain level and don't care for them as deeply or feel the impact of whatever happens to them in that particular story. I don't know what a 3-star would be for me, honestly, or even a 2-star. I have, again, because I'm not as avid of a reader, I would probably put something as a 3-star if I just don't feel like I can get through it. For example, this one book I'm thinking of in particular, The Book Thief, I think it is. Highly recommended, and I think it's highly rated.
It's very highly rated. I've read it, yeah.
But I picked it up right after I got done with like a Don Winslow series about drug cartels. And the dichotomy between those two like storylines, I just wasn't really in the headspace. And so I just couldn't get through it. I think I got a third of the way through and I just put it down.
Yeah. The Book Thief is definitely like a slow burn. Yeah. So you kind of have to
commit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would want to read it again. I haven't picked it up since, but it still lingers as like one of those that I think I would like to finish. So
yeah. Yeah. So I feel like we're on the same page with ratings.
Yeah. Agreed.
So I think the plan for the podcast is to have a book. I'll give an overview of the book. We will do the overview with no spoilers. Mm-hmm. And then we will warn the audience if the rest of the content has spoilers in it. And then I think we'll have a discussion amongst the two of us about the book. And I'll ask you questions about the book.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. What's our first book that we're going to put out there for the world? Do we want to tease that out yet? Are we going to hold on to it?
No, I think we should throw it out into the universe.
Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros.
Yes. Great book.
I finished, I guess, a couple months ago now. Time has flown by, but I'm in halfway through the second one now. So everything's still really fresh in my head. And I'm excited to talk about that one.
And she just released the cover for the third one, which comes out, I think, in January, which will be here, like that.
I know, for reals. It'll be good Q&A and then just kind of organic from there.
Yes.
Which we tend not to have too much trouble with.
No. Yeah, and then after the interview, we'll probably tee up the next book.
Yeah.
And then do it all over again.
Yeah, I'm excited. Like you said in the beginning, this is something we've talked about for quite a while. And so it's fun to see it come together. It's fun for something you and I to do together. And who knows, what might catch on, even if it's just the two ladies at the bookstore in Westfield that wind up listening to it. Or
just our families. Yeah. Thank you, family.
Donation button is on the website.
Yeah. Go fund us.
Go fund me.
All right. Thanks for listening. Maybe this one will be the one your husband reads.
There we go. Sign off.
Take care then. Bye-bye now.